How's it going, everybody? RazingHel here, and welcome back to our playthrough of the military campaign for Stronghold 2. Today we are going to be completing mission number 9, Lord Barclay's Castle.
We buried Sir Grey in Lady Seren's Abbey. He has fought longer than anyone else has in this war, but will not see the final battle.
It has been many a year since we last spoke, William, and all that time, my advisors have been telling me that you were the one who betrayed our country.
Your Majesty, I would never...
William! You make a very poor traitor. Welcome back.
Your Majesty.
William and the King have mended their bond of trust, and we are ready for the final assault. The King has laid down the plans for our three-pronged attack, with each of us commanding a separate battle.
Okay, so as you can see there, we are supposed to kill Lord Barclay. That is the win objective. And the lose objective is if my lord dies. So this is a siege mission here, and what I'm doing at the very beginning is sending that cat up into that high area, that high bluff, and then I'm also sending some ballistas, some fire ballistas along with it.
Brenda King's had Jimmy at a stick. You need
Captains, look to your rear!
We must send him reinforcements!
No! Commence the siege! I will hold here!
So the idea here is that I needed to remove some archers and that ballista up on top of this tower right here. I successfully did that, as you can see, and then there are 3 mangonels that I need to progressively remove as well. Those 3 mangonels do not do much damage against individual units like this, especially when guarded by a cat. They're very inaccurate, first of all, and if you have a cat protecting your siege units, you're not going to really notice the damage that you take from it. Melee units or other humanoid units, on the other hand, will get knocked back and be dealt an incredible amount of damage from it. So that's why you want to remove these 3 mangonels first.
But the clan MacLeod lives on. My brothers will avenge me. Your
regroup and attack! We have lost too much time already!
So after I successfully removed those mangonels up there, now I'm preparing for the second leg of the assault. I'm going to be moving my 4 catapults into this valley area here, along with 2 ballistas and the cat, and we're going to be going to take out Gatehouse ahead of us there, as well as some of the log traps that are along the wall. So one strategic shot from a catapult will be capable of removing those log those log traps that are mounted on the walls that can deal a lot of damage to your army. Here I'm sending 2 spearmen ahead to trip a couple of those man traps that are set up there to make sure that my siege equipment don't get destroyed by them. So it's always important to keep your spearmen ready at the ready, just to be able to scout some terrain ahead to make sure there are no traps there, because it's a very big loss if you actually lose siege equipment to very cheap traps like that. As you can see over here, I was just giving you a brief overview of what was going on with the other 2 prongs of the attack. There are 2 other prongs, one from the King and one from Sir William. Neither of them are absolutely essential, but they can actually help you in pretty significant ways. Here I'm placing that one strategic shot at the wall. I want to make sure I don't actually destroy that part of the wall, because I need to use it later with an archer, and I'll point that out when I need to do it. So one hit will do it. We'll remove the log without making the wall area inaccessible. That wall needs to remain accessible so that units can walk over it. Next objective is to remove that gatehouse. It's the one that I'm looking over at the siege, what William was doing there. So as soon as this cat gets up, I'll move 2 ballistas and 4 catapults into range. I could use more ballistas, but those were the 2 ballistas that I had hotkeyed. You can see we're taking a little bit of damage here, but the cat's going to protect me. The catapults, I'm going to try to get them started firing at the gatehouse there. And then I'm using the fire ballistas. I'm using the hotkeys to make sure that I grab each one, and then I knock those archers off there. So now you can see I'm no longer being fired at. And that's a pretty important point to make, because otherwise your cat will take a lot of damage if you don't remove those archers pretty early on. The next objective here is to actually remove this pikeman from the wall. There are 2 pikemen up there on that wall. I need to get up on that wall, and as long as pikemen are up there, there's the possibility that when I put a ladder up there, they will knock it off. So I want to remove that. Obviously, you can see here that the ballista itself doesn't have quite the right range at the moment. And then I was having a little bit of trouble with the catapults as well, because the catapults, I didn't originally set them all to fire at the gatehouse, so I wasn't dealing as much damage as I had initially thought I was dealing. But now you can see they're all firing at that gatehouse, and they're not being fired back upon, so it's a very good setup there. That's the best way you can do it so far. I got that second pikeman off the walls there, and now I'm sending in a couple of laddermen. So I'm going to get those laddermen up on the walls there. There is a little area. You might not think that wall is accessible, but it is. There was another pikeman who's coming along. I don't think he uses... He doesn't knock the ladder off. He just climbs down the ladder, interestingly enough, to fight one of my laddermen. I think he kills the ladderman off, but I've got some other things to do. These archers on this wall over here of Lord Barclay's castle, like the secondary defense, those need to be removed. And once again, I'm going to be using the fire ballistas to do that. I have the fire ballistas hotkeyed to number 1 and number 2, and I'll just alternate between those two and set up different shots. So that way it gives me twice the effective firing power as opposed to selecting them and then firing. And one bolt will knock an archer off a wall and kill it, obviously. There are also some spearmen over there, but for some reason there's like some terrain in my way or something, and I can't do anything with them. So the next objective is to actually get the archers on the walls. It takes me a little bit of time to do this, and as you can see, I tripped a trap right there. Luckily enough, that trap was not tripped when I actually moved my siege equipment there. Okay, here we go, and I'm sending this one archer up on top of the wall. You have to be careful here because there was a ballista on the other side of this area, along with some crossbowmen. So you have to be very careful when you're doing this. That's why I keep the archer inside this tower. I tell him to go to the top of the tower, but when he gets to the top of the tower and I can see the inside, I tell the archer to remain on the inside of the tower, so that way the ballista bolt cannot knock him off the wall. Once I get to this last tower here, I stand on that little platform that guarantees me easy fire without being fired back on, and I keep the archer there to remove both the ballista in that tower and all but one of the crossbowmen stationed up there. This saves you a little bit of damage from having to send your mace men, for example, to go up there. The next point of interest here is our spearmen. I'm sending the spearmen up there. I want to trip a trap. I want to get the fire. There's some pitch laying around here. I just don't want that pitch to be accidentally ignited by a unit that I didn't see. For example, if there's an archer on the wall next to a brazier I didn't see somewhere, and then I send my siege equipment in there and it gets all burnt up. I just don't want that to happen. So that's why I sent those swordsmen there ahead of time, and this time I hit that wall quite hard, knocked the rolling logs off of it, and everything should be fine. You can see the archers sniping away at a couple of those crossbowmen up there on top of that tower, as I mentioned before. Now I'm going to be continuing this assault with the spearmen, just sort of minesweeping here for traps. There should be more traps over here, and I want to make sure that, you know, that this stuff doesn't happen to my more valuable troops. You'll notice later on in this mission that there are some mistakes that I made in terms of how I did the minesweeping. I didn't do it quite. I wasted troops when doing it, and then some of my valuable troops obviously ended up getting hurt because of that. We got a couple of more pikemen coming down the wall here, but I have some archers there along with my catapults, so they should be taken care of pretty quickly. An alternative, of course... Oh, by the way, I had sniped all the units except for that one crossbowman, so I sent my archer to the top of the tower, so that way the other crossbowman would aggro onto him, who would move closer to the edge of the tower, so I could go back down to the mid-level of the tower and snipe again from that safety spot. I'm moving the rest of these archers on top of the opposing main tower. You can see that crossbowman's getting attacked right there, and I don't get shot back at because I'm standing on the little platform. I'm moving the other archers into the tower opposing this one with the crossbow though, and the general idea is that since there are going to be some pikemen around here, simply having these archers sitting around will allow me to take a few of them out and make provide some covering fire. Archers in this mission are not that useful, to be honest. I tend to use the fire ballista and the catapults a lot more, and then for the final assault we have melee troops, heavy hitting troops, armored troops, such as the swordsmen and the pikemen. So here I'm doing a little bit more minesweeping with the macemen. I think I used up all of my spearmen before, so that's why I had to do it this way. Everything seems to be good. You can set them up to different formations, but this is Stronghold, and they do not maintain their formations very well. Stronghold 3 had much better maintained formations than in Stronghold 2, even though whenever you told them to move, they'd initially pause for a second. So there's various trade-offs you make. I have a couple of archers on that wall again that I need to remove with the fire ballistas, and 1 and 2, and both of them are down. They're both dead at this point. Now, this is getting a little bit tricky. Our approach to this next wall requires me to consider 2 ballistas. There's a ballista in the short Bastion Tower that's directly ahead from here, and then there is a ballista in the square tower to the right of this area. Both of those can effectively take my siege equipment out, so I have to come up with a strategy or a contingency plan to make sure that they don't deal too much damage to me. I think, though, I decided to go ahead here and just move the archers to one of those square towers in hopes of having better coverage of that courtyard area with that wall up there. There are some more archers and some more pikemen on those walls, and I just want to get rid of them. Now, William's attack at this point is completely spent. He still has some laddermen running around. Sometimes you'll have laddermen running around, sometimes you won't. It seems to be a little bit of a hit and miss issue, a little bit of a bug. And the king's attack is still waiting. He can't get in because he doesn't have any siege equipment. So he's waiting for me to provide an entry for him into the castle. And alternatively, laddermen can also do this when they're running across the top of that gatehouse, and this can happen when William is playing. And like I said before, William is a little bit unpredictable. You can't always tell what he's going to do. Sometimes he opens up the gatehouse for the king, sometimes he doesn't. Either way, the way I played this here, it doesn't matter whether or not the king survives, because you're going to be seeing later on, I take out the king entirely by myself. The king obviously helped me a little bit, but it wasn't nearly the killing blow. I could have done it without his attack. I'm pretty sure of it. So it's not absolutely essential that you time this correctly with the king. And as you can see right here, at the moment, just William is, sort of in the same area as I am, and attacking. The king is still out there waiting for somebody to open the gate. At this point, I'm sending my macemen in to the other tower that the crossbowmen used to be on. There are some I think there's some pikemen and some archers. You see those archers firing at me right now along this wall. One important thing you might want to keep in mind when sending these melee troops anywhere is that by default, they're not set to defensive. They're set to stand ground. And as you can see right here, when your units are sent to stand ground, they will not automatically aggro onto enemy units around there. So that's just something you want to keep in mind, especially later on when you're beginning the final assault and you send all of your armored units into the keep. If you forget to go ahead and set them to aggressive or at least defensive, they'll end up standing around if you're not micromanaging them. And when you're playing at a very high speed like I am here, I'm playing it at the fastest speed that I can, speed 90, because otherwise this mission can drag on for a substantial amount of time. It's very difficult to micromanage, and so therefore you probably want to set those units to defensive or aggressive. Here I'm taking out that one ballista that I was talking about. I was not within range. It did not target me, so I was certainly safe there. I'm not sure if that was a little bit of a fluke, because sometimes it has targeted me when I'm at this range, but just trial and error a lot of times. See how close you can get so that you can fire at it without it being fired upon yourself. I'm also removing those two archers in that Bastion Tower, and then I'll be able to start chipping away at the wall there, because there's some log traps that we want to get rid of. Now this is a part of the mission, I would say, where I started slowing down a little bit. I couldn't quite decide what to do. I'm sending in my two trebuchets right now, and there's this very excellent place to put them right there next to the bluff, close to his castle, so that way I can target both of the gatehouse ahead as well as one of those very large great towers. And I'm also now taking down the wall here into that initial courtyard area. Now, one of the things that goes without saying here is that I'm actually doing the commentary here in post-production, mostly because at the time of battle, I just need to be able to concentrate on what I'm doing. And as you can see, William sort of threw a tool in the spanner. This mission's a lot easier, by the way, if the king does not get into the courtyard before you let him in. In this case, William let him in. William's ladderman let the king into the courtyard. So now the king's men are going to go ahead and attack, which means I can't use them to my advantage. I'm not quite ready. I haven't had my trebuchets set up yet, and the gatehouse is not down yet. So this was unfortunate. This was something I didn't want to have happen, but we're going to go ahead with it anyway. As I said before, you don't need the king's men to actually win this episode. So what I targeted first with those two trebuchets there was that large gatehouse. Once the large gatehouse is down, things become significantly easier, but then there was also that very great tower that I want to target with them after the gatehouse is down. At this point, I don't have to worry about letting the king's men in, and usually I would wait longer. You can see the king's men took a fair bit of damage because I wasn't able to remove a lot of the defenses for him beforehand, but at the same time, he will actually... Oh, there goes the gatehouse. This was actually very lucky. The amount of time it took me to take down that gatehouse was much lower than normal. I landed a lot of lucky shots on that one with the trebuchets. I was sending the the macemen around here a little bit, just to mine sweep to make sure there are no traps here from my siege equipment, and now I'm planning on taking out both the ballista and those crossbowmen in the top of that tower. I can target them with my fire ballistas. So now that the gatehouse is down, the second thing I'm targeting, like I mentioned before, is that great tower next to the keep, the one with the mangonel on it, because the mangonel can do a lot of damage, and it is a tower that is within my range. Now I know it has a lot of health, but you'll see by the time this is finished, the whole thing will be down. The king's men are actually doing a pretty good job. They're pushing into the keep quite nicely. If the gatehouse isn't down, they generally don't get that far, so it's important to have the gatehouse down before the king's men are that close if you want them to really contribute anything. But as you can see, they're almost pretty much dead. So at that point, you know, I'm going to have to provide the last bit of support here to actually finish this battle. It's pretty much all on me at this point. Now, at this point, I had also wished I had done a little bit more. I hadn't actually removed as much wall as I had hoped I had. So, yeah, I wasn't feeling too confident about this at this moment in time. So that's why, at this point, things seem a little bit indecisive. Like, I wasn't intending for the king to launch his attack so early, so I was a little bit off guard there. And sometimes I've also noticed Sir William's laddermen do not continue being spawned. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't. It just seems to be a little bit random. I would say, though, that more times than not, he has actually sent his laddermen in. And the laddermen, what they do best is they cause chaos. They cause Lord Barclay's men to target other stuff. They cause them to focus on units other than my units, which can actually provide you a little bit of cover. If they aren't there, I mean, you can do it, but it is a little bit easier if the laddermen are running around the place causing trouble. At this point, I am removing the last bits of wall there. I'm still a little bit unsure of my approach. Originally, I was going to do like a loop around this wall and try to take the same path that the king took. But as you'll notice towards the end, I kind of forget that plan, and I send my troops directly into this courtyard, and there are a lot of enemy traps in this courtyard. I also wanted to take out those two crossbowmen standing there at the bottom of that wall. I couldn't target them with my ballistas though, because apparently there was like a wall in the way or something, but I finally got both of them taken out there, so that was a bit of a distraction that I finally dealt with. I also took out some punishment buildings at the same time, and then there's this one archer on top of a wall. Now this is all really minor stuff, and at this point I am pretty safe in saying you should have launched the attack, providing that great tower's down. I guess that's what I'm mostly doing here as I'm stalling for time, waiting for that great tower to come down, and then I'm ready to launch an all-out attack. But until that point, I end up messing around here a little bit, and it's a little bit of extra time. It's not all that exciting, but I'm doing some other stuff like sending in archers to try to minesweep. This is where I'm talking about. Like, there are these big traps sitting around here, and I sent the archers in because the archers are pretty much expendable. They get killed so easily that I really didn't see any way I could use them without actually using the cat, and the cat took a lot of damage before. So this was the L shape. I was going to take the L shape approach through the courtyard instead of, like, I was going to take a right angle through it. And that's what I cleared it out for here with the archers. I didn't clear it for a diagonal approach, but you'll notice later that I take a diagonal approach, and it means that a lot more of my units end up dying, in addition to the archers that were sacrificed here for the L-shaped approach, the right angle approach through that courtyard. Just something to keep in mind in the future. I would try to do that differently if I did it again, but once again, you're playing on the fastest speed. Sometimes you overlook things like that. The next objective here is to actually remove the ballista in that tower. There's a Bastion Tower set up at the far end of this wall that apparently William's worthless men didn't bother removing, because William's men didn't really do anything to help me besides put some ladders up. But there is still a ballista up there, and I want to make sure that's out of the way before my troops get into its range, because it can knock a whole bunch of my troops over. It gets a lucky shot and it can, like, grab 10 of my swordsmen and knock them over or something. So it's just undesired. They can knock them into terrain and stuff like that, and in general, I just don't want that to happen. So that's the explanation behind the advancement there with the catapults, the 4 catapults, the cat, and the 2 ballistas. The ballistas are once again going to be removing the tower-mounted ballista, and sometimes you can have a little bit of trouble with this, getting it in quite the right area, but the best way to do it is just select the ballista and move it around until when you hover over the ballista in the tower that you want to remove, you get that little attack icon, that little red icon. And the great tower, the largest tower in the game, is almost down there, and once that's done, then we'll be pretty much ready to launch the final assault. And this was another genius. This is where I cut across the courtyard. Remember, after I mentioned that I was going to approach it at a right angle, I took those archers and I sent them across the courtyard in a diagonal, in a straight line, basically. So I lost some archers there, and then I had the brilliant idea, oh, well, I'll just send the crossbowmen. And to be honest, the ranged units here are pretty ineffective. They're most useful to me as cannon fodder. So it wasn't a bad loss, but it'd be something I'd do differently. Once again, cutting diagonally here across this courtyard, and a whole bunch of my crossbowmen get killed at that point. So, I mean, at least they weren't my swordsmen getting killed. So there was a silver lining there. But Ultimately, the pathfinding for these units resulted in me losing a lot more to traps than I should have because they insisted upon fanning out and finding as many of those traps as possible. So the Great Tower is down. Like, officially it is down now. There's no mangonel on top of it anymore. But I still have this Bastion Tower with a ballista in it to take out. And I'm not quite within range with my ballistas yet, so I moved and inched forward there a bit. Didn't end up taking any fire, but even if I had a cat to help protect my siege units. And at this point, my siege units, at least the ones that are being protected by the cat, are not that important. Even the ones, the trebuchets, don't matter that much. And remember, one important thing about the trebuchets is that once you place them somewhere, you can't move them again. This is specific to Stronghold 2, so you want to make sure that you build them in a good place. And for me, the best place is where I built them in this mission, in this playthrough. So at this point, it's looking like we're going to do our final push. I sent my pikemen, swordsmen, and knights into the keep, and I have them set to aggressive, as I pointed out before. And then I'm going to send the macemen in to hopefully run off to the side and take out some of those ballistas that are shooting at me. But as you can see, I'm losing quite a few, well, maybe not quite a few, a couple of swordsmen and stuff to those killing traps, those killing pits. I forget exactly. They're the large killing pit. I forget exactly what it was called. But as you'll see here, I successfully get the macemen to take out the majority of those fire ballistas there, which is really good because otherwise they'll continually knock my swordsmen around the place. And there's a little bit of pitch there right in front of the keep, but luckily the area that my units took through the stockpile resulted in them not walking into fire at all. So that was really good. And this is going to be a little bit of a tense fight here. Look, if you can get your attack here timed with the king's attack, this will be a walk in the park right here. You will not have to fight through much of anything at all. The king might do it himself if you have everything down like you want. But in this case, yeah, you're going to be doing a little bit of tough fighting here. You just want to make sure that you target the Barclay as quickly as possible. I just ignore the crossbowmen up there because ultimately they're going to be dealing damage, and if I'm just walking around the keep, it doesn't matter. I'm going to be taking damage anyway. So I just want to focus on Barclay as quickly as possible.
I surrender.
Final victory is ours! Huzzah!
And here we get to see the very end cutscene. This is for the good, I guess you could say, the good ending, where Barclay and Edwin end up being paraded around in a cage, I guess, for public humiliation, which is a small price to pay for war crimes, I think, or crimes against the kingdom, treason, all that stuff. And that completes mission number 9. So for Stronghold 2. So thank you very much for watching as always, and I hope to see you next time.